Did you guys see this one? Did you guys see who was stumping for the Big 12, who was giving the Big 12 some extra PR? That would be none other than SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. Okay? SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was the one who was really helping give the Big 12 an extra push. And it's especially illuminating, I think, here in the context of talking about the Big 12 versus the ACC. Because what is frustrating is, as a Big 12 fan, if you are a Big 12 fan, it is frustrating to see, oh, hey, this was a year where actually it would have been a terrific year to have a dominant team or a couple of teams up at the top that were pulling away from everybody else, like it looked like midway through the season Iowa State and BYU could be. And it would have been just a great year to not, if you got on a scale of 1 to 10 cannibalization, if you just got like a 6 instead of like a 9, it would have been a great year for that. You would have been in a very good position to get 2 teams into the playoff right now. At least really push that envelope, really make SEC country squirm, right? Because with Bama, Ole Miss, and A&M losing, I mean, they're in a world of trouble too, or else it's just going to be throwing 3-loss SEC teams in there. You could have really been a part of the conversation and or gotten a second team in. But you picked the wrong year. You picked the wrong year. And maybe this will be every year. I can hear the pushback right now. Well, John, that'll just be the Big 12 every year. Maybe it will be. But this would have been a great year for an exception to kick things off. Really would have been a great year for an exception. Because the ACC is about to benefit for having 2 pretty strong teams. We can debate the merits of it. I have to kind of stop myself when I think about SMU and particularly Miami, actually, and say, look, John, this is a year where, like, college football, there are just no great teams. Maybe Oregon, maybe, but there really are no truly great teams. So when you get frustrated and think, man, how many times have I seen Miami screw around, play with its food like they did on Saturday, by the way, with Wake Forest before just unloading on them in the final like 10 minutes of the game? I mean, we've seen it all year. We've seen it all year from them. But yet that's enough right now because you're also watching these teams in the SEC lose games. So you got to give Miami credit for finding ways to pull out the wins. But the ACC has had 2 pretty strong teams at the top with SMU and with Miami. And even though SMU lost to BYU on their home field, it is what it is. The ACC really looks like they can benefit by having both of those teams there. Now, things can fall apart, you know, if there is a Miami loss on Saturday, then that winds up pumping Clemson into the championship game, and that could possibly change some things. But even then, 2-loss Miami is going to be in the conversation in all likelihood, very much so, for an at-large bid. They've got a sexy Heisman candidate quarterback. They've got a phenomenal player there that's drawn a lot of attention throughout the year, and they have enough wins. And what really, truly matters, and has to matter to a great extent, is what actually happens on the field in games that you win and lose. But I'm really not sure, even though the ACC is so much more well-positioned, right? Because whether it is Miami or SMU that wins it and the loser has 2 losses, right? You would have like a 1-loss champion and a 2-loss championship game loser, especially with the committee already saying, now we'll see, but saying they're not going to punish too much for teams playing in that conference championship game. They're in a great position. They're in a great situation, and the Big 12 is not. Despite all of that, the Big 12 is absolutely not a significantly worse conference than the ACC. They're not a worse conference than the ACC. And the numbers would back that up, namely, like Sagarin, right? If you want to just go to the Sagarin rankings, Sagarin has the Big 12 as the 2nd best conference in the country, has the ACC as the 4th. And yes, you heard me correctly. Sagarin has the Big 12 as the 2nd best conference in the country, even ahead of the Big 10. So is that a perfect rating? Do I think that the Big 12 is the 2nd best conference in the country? I do not. It's not perfect, but it is one data set, and Sagarin's been around forever. It was part of the BCS formula. That's something that people have been using for a very long time. one metric, one data point, but it would certainly suggest that the Big 12 is not behind the ACC. If you want to start going through these teams and these things, I've already talked ad nauseum about BYU went to SMU and they won. And that was, yes, a game when they still started Preston Stone, but he only threw 4 passes and Kevin Jennings played the rest of the game, played the overwhelming majority of that game. BYU mauled him, shut him down, and won. So there's that. That's the only loss SMU has. How many combined ranked wins do SMU and Miami have right now in terms of teams that are ranked right now? Because the answer to that is 0. The answer to that is 0. Neither of those teams has beaten Clemson, right? Let me double check the Miami. Yeah, I was correct there. Okay, I was like, I know I looked at this earlier today. Miami, they've got Florida, which looks like a nice win for sure right now. Florida, kind of like Kansas, is playing like a team that should be in the top 25 right now for sure. They beat them 41-17 on the road. That is a good game that has aged well. But outside of that, Vatech, Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, lose to Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. Not much meat on the bone there. We're talking about teams that are ranked in the playoff poll as a tangible data point there. You can't give any to SMU or Miami, these two teams up here at the top of that league. Clemson doesn't either, and they got smacked around by Louisville. I know Clemson's not even like really firmly in the discussion right now here either, but I think people's perception would be, well, look at what's at the top of that league. SMU, Miami, and Clemson. Those are better teams than what's at the top of the Big 12. They are not. They are not. Absolutely not. Clemson obviously got completely demolished by Georgia, who is, it's a flawed Georgia team this year. Still very good, but a flawed Georgia team. And outside of that, Clemson, App State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake, Virginia, lost to Louisville, Vatech, Pitt, the Citadel. What is there that is impressive? Those 3 teams, 0 wins over teams that are ranked in the current college football playoff poll. So what leg is there to stand on here for you to tell me that the ACC has been a stronger league than the Big 12 this year? Big 12 had a team get hot here at the end of the year in Kansas that has gone kamikaze on everything, for sure. That's a part of it. But also, I think just the middle of the Big 12 is better than the middle of the ACC. Duke, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Pitt. If you're talking about Kansas, the way they're playing right now, Kansas, K-State, Baylor, Texas Tech, I think that even TCU, you want to throw them in there. I think that caliber, that class of the Big 12 is a little bit better than what there is in the ACC. So it's led to a bit more parity. I don't think at the top things are really very different. Miami's more flashy than anything that the Big 12 has, but the resumes and the numbers and the data would not tell you that Clemson, Miami, or SMU is significantly better than Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, Iowa State. Take your pick there. If you don't believe me on all of this, everybody, if you don't believe me, do you believe Greg Sankey? How do you feel about Greg Sankey around here? How do you feel about that? Because Greg Sankey believes in the Big 12, so much so that he put out this piece this week propping up BYU. Now, that was not his intention, okay? But Greg Sankey did a great job pushing Overlord Karen, Brett Yormark, everything that they want to be pushing right now. He put that out there and did it well, because Greg Sankey compiled this nice, handy-dandy little chart, this strength of schedule rank chart, where he takes ESPN, Massey, and there's that name again, Sagarin, okay? Sagarin. And with all of that, compiles an average. Now, his point was, look at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Top 6 in the country would be all from the SEC, starting with Georgia at number 1. But then, who's next? Who's next after that? Oh, that's right. It's BYU. BYU, who took bullets from everybody all year about how good they actually were. BYU would have the 7th best strength of schedule in the top 15 there. Ahead of Penn State, ahead of Oregon, ahead of Ohio State. There's Miami and SMU with 55 and 70, looking up at BYU with 39 on the strength of schedule. So Greg Sankey is, in essence, if you are a college football fan right now, he is, in essence, your overlord. You must pay your respects on a weekly basis at the altar of Greg Sankey. He runs the show. This is Greg Sankey showing you that BYU has a much stronger case than anybody in the ACC in terms of what they have played on their schedule so far this year. So don't take it up with me. Take it up with Greg Sankey, the czar of college football. He is the one also helping to make this point that I am. All right. Greg Sankey went to 3rd grade. Greg Sankey knows the difference between your and your, Double O'Neill. And Greg Sankey would tell you that BYU has had a tougher road this year than anybody in the ACC. So take it up with Sankey. Don't have to take it up with me. That is fine. Anyway, in conclusion, as you can see, there's really not much of a leg to stand on for any sort of argument that the ACC is a significantly better league than the Big 12. They have cannibalized themselves just ever so slightly less, and that is paying big dividends for them right now based on all of the chaos in front of everybody, namely from the SEC and the week that the SEC had. So that is where we are at. That is where we are at, my friends.